Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Demystify Selling with Microsoft. And I'm very excited to have a repeat guest today with me, Rob Lawrence. Rob, welcome.
Hey, thanks. Thanks so much, Rob. Rob Fegan and Rob Lawrence. So
Right?
two
Yeah.
Robs.
It's the Rob show. So,
Yeah.
well, Rob, I'm super excited for our conversation today. I know we've had a chance to talk in the past, but before we jump in, I'd love it if you could just share a little bit about where you're at in Microsoft and your role, what that means, so that people understand that and sort of have some context for today's conversation.
Sure. I'll give a little perspective on that. So I sell an enterprise at Microsoft. So I am part of Microsoft US or MSUS. I sell an enterprise. I'm in what's called strategics. So there's smaller accounts, then there's majors, then there's strategics, which are the biggest accounts. And in that category, I am part of what's called software and digital platforms, or SDP. So, Microsoft's a big and confusing place, but that'll give you some idea of where I sit.
Yeah.
And SDP was founded about 4 or 5 years ago now, as Microsoft has been transitioning in the US from a geographic model to an industry model. And the theory and practice, which I agree with both, are that the more time you spend working in an industry, the more familiar you get with industry problems, the more likely you are to develop specialized knowledge. And I think that's really worked out. And just to paint a little bit of a contrast, when I started at Microsoft, my customers included one of the world's top management consulting companies, the second largest shipping company in the world, a software review company. So I had like this grab bag, right? So it was like I was driving in 4 or 5 gears at once all the time. So now I just work with software companies, which is great, and I get a lot more focus. So I'm part of the team that sells to the software customer, right? But most of my revenue that comes in through me and my team results from that customer selling their product to their end customer. So that'll give people some idea. And for people who know the partner organization at Microsoft, I'm not part of that. I'm part of the direct sales team, but due to the nature of the industry we're in, I work very closely with the partner side.
I love that. And that actually leads into what we're going to talk about today, which is partnering with Microsoft. But before we do that, just for those that don't know, if I got this right, your role is an ATS.
Correct.
Is that
Yeah.
correct? And maybe you could just take a minute and talk about the role of an ATS.
Yeah, sure. I think the ATS roles existed at Microsoft for about 15 years or something.
Yeah, it's been
I've
around,
been
that's for
there.
sure.
Yeah, I've been there about half of that time. So what this role is, and I like to say, if you've met one ATS, you've met one. There's a lot of ways to do the role, but I think the general idea is that whereas you have an account executive who's responsible for the all-up commercial relationship, we are that counterpart. We have the same metrics. We're supposed to be doing a lot of the same things, but we're a little less focused on the contracts and that side, and we're a little more focused on the customer's view of our technology, helping them understand what we have, understanding their install base, and helping them understand how they can implement Microsoft technology to their best advantage. So I actually come out of management consulting originally. So I think that has given me one good way to do the job.
Yep.
I kind of put on my advisory hat that I used a lot in the past. But I also know people in the account technology strategist role who are, former developers, you know, just good relationship people. So there's a lot of good ways to do the job. But my way is I come from a kind of a business strategy and operations consulting perspective.
I love that. I love the saying that if you've met one ATS, you've just met one.
Yeah, it's really
That's great.
true. Yeah, I
That's
mean there's dozens of types. So
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. Well, I'm excited to jump in. And really, what I wanted to spend some time with you talking about, Rob, is the concept of working with partners.
sure.
Because I think that, even in the large enterprise where you sit and in the strategics, partners are still a big part of your motion, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And the term gets confusing, right? Because my customer is a partner to me, but then I have partners who
Yeah,
approach my customer in partnership
right.
with me, right? So so let's just focus on the latter, right? So
Yes,
these are people who are selling to my customer, working with me, right?
exactly. Yeah,
And so these consist of some cases service companies, right? And they might be consulting oriented, where they do kind of fee for service or fixed project price work. And then you might have an MSP, like a managed service provider. That's another type of partner. Then, of course, you have ISVs, which are a critical category. So all of these are partners to me. They're all important, and I need to work with all of them to, make my number and be successful.
yeah.
So,
Well, that's great. That really gives context for what I want to ask you in my first question, which is from the inside, your perspective, what do most partners fundamentally misunderstand about how to work with Microsoft sellers and how those sellers evaluate partners that are going to work with your end customer?
yeah, and I'll start by saying it's a general extension of the problem we all have as human beings, right? Which is that when we approach somebody else, where we overestimate our own importance to them, right? And we put our own needs ahead of theirs. So, we all have that tendency. I think we're all always unlearning that, right? And, a partner approaching me as a Microsoft seller is no different. So, like, until they've really kind of learned the game and how we work, I think they're going to tend to overestimate how much time we have to talk to them. And I don't mean that in like we're so great kind of way. I mean, everybody suffers from that problem today. The
Right.
shortage of time, short of attention, right? So yeah, they're gonna underestimate. They're going to overestimate how much time we have to talk to them. They're going to overestimate our bandwidth, our ability to listen to them unpack their value proposition, et cetera, et cetera. And so they're generally not going to be efficient enough in how they do that. So I think one thing we could do in this discussion today is kind of really help improve how they approach us. So
Right. So really be efficient at delivering the value proposition. Really be efficient at if they're coming to the table with an offer they think that your customer could benefit and want to share with you, be concise. Am I getting that right?
yeah, yeah, and the other thing is like often the Microsoft seller is not like we're not so much interested in the features and benefits of your product. We're interested in the features and benefits as your customer has already processed those, right?
Mhm.
So let's say that you are your partner X, and we're talking about customer A, right? So you come to
Yeah.
me and you say, "Hey, I'm partner X. This is my product," and you start talking about your product. Um, like some of that background is useful, but that part should be short. Most
Yeah.
of the discussion should be about customer A, right? Which is, um, you know, how they already know you. That's really important.
Hmm.
We don't really have time to be in the introductions business or anything.
Yeah.
Um, why they think you're important, right? Like why you're already incumbent there, or why you think they're about to make a change to you, or they're about to start buying you as a product that they don't buy already, right?
Hmm.
And who are your advocates in there already? So if you come to
Yeah.
me and you say, "Hey, I'm partner X. I'm selling into customer A. You know, such and such people like me already. I have a relationship. They already buy our product, or we're doing a land expand. Here's why it's catching on. That's like a really winning approach. Like, because then I'm
Right.
just going to say, wow, okay, I trust you. Like you have a clue. You know how to talk to them already. That's great. Um, what is not as successful is if you want me to mediate the relationship in any way, right? Because it's already hard enough for me to understand them. I never have a perfect purchase on how my customers think. So I'm trying to figure them out. And then if I'm also figuring you out and I'm playing some kind of a role as a mediator, that's just an awkward position to be in. And I generally
Right.
want to stay out of that. So, I think if you don't treat Microsoft as your prospecting engine, but rather a party that can help accelerate sales once you've already established why the customer cares about you, I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you right, it's don't show up saying, "Hey, I want you to introduce me to this person and help me find an opportunity." It's really, I understand this customer, customer A. I understand their business. I may have worked with other customers just like them. We understand this is the problem. These are the people we're talking to. And then they leverage you and Microsoft to help accelerate the deal forward. That might be funding, that might be understanding some licensing, whatever it might be. It's
Right.
more in that capacity.
Yeah, right. And we love to help with that part
Yeah.
because often it means like the product is going to land on Azure, right? So it's going to land in an Azure tenant for our customer. It's going to drive results for us. So that's awesome, right? So we definitely care
Yeah.
about that, right? We're not too cool for that. Quite the opposite, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what we want to help with. Again, though, what we worry about is your value proposition is unclear. Like if we have to expend our political capital to position you, that's not
Mm.
something I would ask of you. So I don't want you to ask that of me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a great way to put it, is that that's a hard thing to come by, that political capital.
Yeah,
So
it takes a while. Like I think Warren Buffett said, it takes like decades to build a reputation. You can lose it in like 5 minutes, right? So
right.
it's
Yeah.
kind of like that, right? So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that makes sense. Well, let me shift gears on you a little bit. And when a Microsoft seller knows a partner, is thinking about bringing a partner into an opportunity, what are some of the signals that either alleviate risk or drive risk in that introduction, when a scenario or a case where you're bringing someone in?
Right.
What do you look for from a risk perspective?
Right. Yeah, that's a good, that's a really good question. So what reduces risk? So, and I think there's slightly different answers depending on whether we're talking about a services company or an ISV, right?
Sure.
And let me start with an ISV. So ISVs typically today they're going to have to run on all three clouds,
Hmm.
all three of the major from a US perspective, Azure, AWS, GCP. So we have to accept that, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to have a level of hyperscaler agnosticism when they work with us. So we can live with that. Um, but what we want to see is, that they're already known by the customer. That helps reduce risk. Someone at the customer has nice things to say about them. That reduces risk. They're able to explain the adoption of their product, right? Because like
Mm.
saying we work with so and so means like nothing, right? But I
Right.
want to know like how many users, if you can't share the dollars, give me some other unit, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're putting 5 terabytes of data into our product every year or whatever, or a month or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Help me understand the scope of it, right? That's really important. Now, for services, I have a different opinion. If I and I'll put it in these terms. If I was starting a services company like IT services right now for the hyperscaler era, I would pick one cloud and I would stick to it.
Mm.
And I'll tell you why. It's because maybe somebody would say, well, you're cutting your addressable market by 2/3, right? You're only
Sure.
going after 1/3. But I'm going to say, yeah, but you're going to be 10 times more successful going after that. Because like if you reach out to me, you're like an SI or you are like an expertise-based services company, and you say, I only work with Microsoft, you know, like 90% of my concern in working with you is gone, right? I'm like,
Right.
oh, that's great. And that means you're going to know how Microsoft works, right? You're not going to get down the road with us and then recommend that they implement on another cloud. It just makes everything easier.
Sure.
And yeah. And then if you already exist and you already work with multiple clouds, split up your practice, you know, so that I just know that like when I'm working with your team, I know who I'm dealing with. I know they're not going to like sell us out or, you know,
Right.
just change midstream. I mean, this was always tough when working with big SIs, you know, and I've done it as an ISV employee too, right? They go, "Oh yeah, we're so interested in your product," and you work on qualifying the opportunity with them and stuff, and then they switch horses on you and they say, "Well, you know, the customer really wants to use such and such product, not yours." And you've already put this effort in. So
Right.
I think everyone will find that easy to understand. But I think you got to have the courage to make that call. And, you know, I'm not supposed to shout out specific um, service providers, whatever. But like there are some where they're just all Microsoft. You can look them up.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
they
No.
call, I just go, oh, I get back to them right away. If they send me an IM, get back to them right away because they know they speak Microsoft. Chances are they know our programs better than I do because they work them
Right.
all the time, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I love working with companies like that. So that other things that indicate high risk are like if you can't speak well to the Microsoft team, you know, you're going to be the exact same person in front of the customer, right? So I always say, like, wherever you go, there you are, right? So
Yeah.
um, if you are rough around the edges or you listen badly with the Microsoft team, I know you're going to do the same thing with the end customer, and you know that's just no good. So
Yeah, I think that, and it kind of, something that I've always been a big proponent for is that know how to talk to your audience. Like when I'm
yeah,
talking to you as Microsoft, I need to understand your sort of language and how you need to hear things because it's in a way that works in your system inside of Microsoft. And that's true of the customer. So I really do agree with you around the fact that you have to know how to talk to people.
yeah, and you have to know how to credentialize yourself quickly in a way that doesn't sound like bragging, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. So, you know, let's say there was a kind of consulting based fee for service security company that reaches out to me and they say, you know, we have these certifications, we have these people who are ex
Mhm.
NSA or whatever, and they say a few things and it's not bragging, but they're just telling me about themselves.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna go, oh, okay, it's high credibility. I'll do my diligence on you. You know, that's great. Um, bravado, I usually I find is usually just overcompensation. So whether you can deliver or not, bravado is going to cause the listener to say,
Yeah.
"Yeah, these guys sound like phonies or whatever." So yeah,
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Well, let me shift gears on you a little bit. And we touched on
sure,
this a little bit in the first question, but I want to double click on it because it really does lean into this talking to people and sharing information. But if I'm an SI or an ISV with an offer and I want to share that with you, what are the few things that you need to hear quickly about that offer to either put it in the right box or have that Rolodex moment, however you
yeah,
want to frame it?
yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's it. That's a good question. So there's a few things, and I think maybe just a couple of them are counterintuitive, right? So I think, I mean, number one is this is our company, right? So tell me how big you are.
Mhm.
If possible, tell us how much revenue you guys have, and then give me a quick kind of breakdown of your product lines, and then the product that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
The product we're talking about, and then set the other ones aside out of the conversation. Talk about why the customer likes the product already, right? Like whether they bought it yet or not, you're in a conversation with them for some reason. So
Yeah.
it's resonated with somebody. Um, it's making sense, the next thing I would just like, even though it's counterintuitive, name a couple of your competitors, not because I'm going to go then talk to them. I don't have time for that anyway, but it's just going to help me understand like where you are.
Yeah, it kind
And
of helps you frame where they fit in the world.
yeah, exactly. Like you always, if you follow like Gartner or Forrester reports, you know how they always have those shifting categories, right?
Yep.
And one of the most deadly things you can be is like when you just don't fit in any of the categories, buyers
Right.
can't, you know. So it's unfortunate. It kind of forces people into boxes, but I'm just afraid that's how people think, right? So,
Yeah.
so helping me position you on a map, and the fact, like if you're talking to us intelligently with consideration, clarity, I'm going to assume you already do that with the customer too, and
Hmm.
I'm going to just try to smooth your path, and
Yeah.
I could just tell you how, like, and when you get off a call, one of the first things people do when they get off a call, if you're on the same team as you, IM each other, right?
Yeah.
So you want the IMs to be, wow, those guys have a clue. They're awesome. You don't want to be like,
Yeah.
who are those
Right.
idiots, right? That's
Yeah.
that's not good, right?
No,
I never
never.
typed that word into
Yeah,
Teams, but
I hear you though. It's
yeah,
the
just
having the positive experience versus the, I just don't think this is the right thing for us or the right fit
yeah,
and just moving on.
yeah, or right, or so and so was aggressive or didn't listen or whatever, none of that's bad. And yeah, the other thing is like I don't know where you are in your career. I'm pretty far along in mine. So I'm just going to say too that some of what is common sense to us, other people may not know yet, right? And I'm
Yeah.
just basing this on where I was like 15, 20 years ago. I'm glad some of those calls aren't still recorded, put it that way. I would be really embarrassed to hear them.
You and I both, Rob. You and I
Yeah,
both. I
because
mean,
I
it's
just was not the best, I maybe wasn't the best listener yet, or I didn't really know how to connect with customers. So,
yeah, yeah, no.
yeah.
The gray hair has I've learned a few of those lessons along the way, like you have.
Yeah,
So
unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we can just transfer experience generation to generation. It's got to be
right,
learned
right.
every time, right?
Yeah, as we're coming to the end here, I got two questions left, and
Sure.
well, one question and then one piece of advice. So how's that? This first question, we've kind of touched on it, but one of the things that for me is always been important is trying to reduce the friction that you, the Microsoft seller, experience in our relationship or your relationship with a customer. And so I just love to have you talk about that from your perspective when it comes to, creating friction or lack thereof.
Yeah, sure. Um, there's one behavior that like people are sure is a slam dunk, and it's actually like not. It's absolutely the wrong thing. And this happens sometimes with like when you have more transactional sales teams
Hmm.
and they lead in a what's in it for you Microsoft message, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, of course we care about that. Like if the product has to drive revenue for us or we don't care ultimately, but you shouldn't lead with that. Like just leading with here's what's in it for you is a little bit tacky.
Yeah.
What you really ought to do is talk about why the customer cares about the product, right?
Right.
Like, here's why the customer loves the product. They're going to use it. They're going to be glad that you, Microsoft, help smooth our path. And then on the back end, you're going to have Azure consume revenue. You don't just come with, "Hey, we retire all this ACR."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Hey,
Don't
Rob, I
be
retire
don't be
this much
breath
ACR.
spray. Don't be very breath spray is the way I put it.
Oh, I like
Don't
that.
come
That's
off
great.
like
That's
that.
great.
Yeah, don't be too backslappy or whatever.
Yeah.
And you want to don't try to be cool. Try to be helpful.
Hmm.
I remember a meeting I was in, one of my early orientations at Microsoft, where we had like Satya talking, and he said, our goal is not to be cool; it's to make other people cool. I like that. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
great.
and then you know, be the right mix of not too salesy and be salesy enough. Like you should, it should be clear you're on the path to a transaction that's going to close and is going to help us and help you. But don't talk about that too much. Just learn how to be graceful.
That really leans into what you were talking about earlier, just understanding your audience and understanding how to communicate them with them and how to be professional in that communication. So I love that. I love that. So As we're wrapping up here, Rob, I would love it if you could share a piece of advice with the Microsoft partner community. And one thing I would ask you to think about, and I know you play in the enterprise space,
Yeah.
in the strategic space, but a lot of times people that listen to this will be running smaller partners focused on smaller customers like the SMB market or the now SME and C market. So I would just love it if you had some advice that is really applicable across the partner ecosystem.
Yeah, and I've started going to events where I meet some more of those folks, and
Mhm.
I really like it. Like everybody's really nice. Like I mean, nice is a vague word, but I mean, but it's the right word in this case.
Mhm.
Like it seems like a supportive community, and there are a lot of partners who work with smaller customers, and they seem to have great relationships. So that's all great. I think if you are selling into what Microsoft calls SMC, SME, um, I, everything I said about focus and stuff, such being diluted applies 100 times more,
Yeah.
right? My understanding, and I haven't worked in that operating unit here at Microsoft. But if you sell into small businesses, you likely have a list of like 100 clients or whatever, right?
Right.
I think it's going to be very likely in that case that a lot of the power dynamic or the information dynamic might be flipped. You might actually know more about your customer than your Microsoft seller will. So in that case, it's almost like the Microsoft seller is um, your platform for execution of something you're driving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all the same points about listening, courtesy, etc., I think apply. Um, but I would just be hyper aware that Microsoft seller. I mean, often it might be somebody who's not that long out of school, right? They might have like
Mhm.
100 accounts. Um,
Right.
they performed quite a feat getting hired by Microsoft, so they've accomplished
True
something
that.
already, even if they're
Yeah.
early in their career, right? So show
Yeah.
them some respect. And then you might encounter places where the processes better than them, right? So
Yeah.
don't get flustered by that. Instead, just try to help you. And yeah, that would be my advice. But I've met some of that community, and they're tremendous. I mean, like I went to an Ultimate Partner event like last year, which was great.
Mhm.
I've been to other things where there's SMB and SMC partners, there's MSPs,
Yeah.
and some of these folks are like great old school relationship sellers. They deliver on their commitments. So, and like if you ever, if somebody sees me on LinkedIn, they want to ask me like, how do I succeed with Microsoft? You know, they're free to send me a direct message. If it's something I know about, I will help because
Yeah.
I'm always trying to pay it forward.
No, I appreciate that, Rob, and I can attest to how helpful you can be. You've been a
Oh, thank
great
you.
resource for me, and I know as I'm coaching partners in this SMB, SME, and C market, a lot of what you said really still resonates. Understanding how to communicate with the Microsoft field and not trying to sell them right out of the gate, like, hey, I'm going to sell this much license or this many ACR credits. Really be thoughtful about packaging your messaging. So I really appreciate your time today, Rob. I thought the conversation was great, and I look forward to you and I getting a chance to do this again.
Yeah, thanks. We'll go for the third time, and we'll be awesome. So thanks again, Rob, and pleasure talking to you. And reach out whenever you want.
I appreciate it. And then, as Rob mentioned, if you want to reach out to him on LinkedIn, you can find him there, and please do connect with him. Thanks,
Thanks so
everybody.
much. Thanks, Rob.
Bye.